and welcome back to Shoot Punch Kick, the podcast where three childhood friends deal with a case of mistaken identity to talk about violent movies from the 80s and 90s. I'm joined with my co-hosts Carlos and Telly. What is up, fellas?
What up? What
Hey,
up?
I
What's
love
up,
the
boys?
fact that Carlos's move for kick is like a power thrust.
Yeah,
What you're not seeing is what's going on underneath the desk.
All
First
right,
of
well,
all, no
okay.
pants, but there's definitely a kick happening. I promise.
I assume that kick
Keep
is
it
like
zoomed in.
the 300 like Leonette, like that front
Yeah,
kick.
exactly.
Is that what
That's
the,
what it is.
okay,
With the
all right.
lean back, that's exactly what's happening.
I
Exactly.
see. Okay.
All right,
That's
look,
right.
we're already solving episode-long mysteries on the show. It's like watching Lost. Today we're crossing the border and we're talking about the 1995 Robert Rodriguez classic Desperado, starring Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek. We're going to go to our friends at ChatGPT to get a synopsis of the film, just in case you're being a crazy person and watching this podcast without seeing the movie. We'll see if we get you up to speed. Madness. So Desperado, directed by Robert Rodriguez, follows El Mariachi, a guitar-playing gunman, seeking revenge against the drug lord Bucho, who killed his lover and left him gravely wounded. As he hunts down Bucho, El Mariachi encounters a series of brutal enemies, forming an alliance with Carolina, a beautiful bookstore owner, who helps him in his mission. This film is packed with stylized gunfights, intense action, and dark humor, culminating in a high-octane showdown as El Mariachi faces Bucho and uncovers a shocking family connection.
All right.
Spoiler alert. ChatGPT. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that the only thing I caught was I don't think he was gravely wounded. I think he just shot him in the hands.
No,
That's
he
the
got.
only thing-
In
In the beginning, like in the flashback,
Yeah,
like he says
yeah.
leaves him gravely wounded. I think that only happened. I think it was just his hands got shot, which didn't allow him to play the guitar. And it was only one hand, right?
Yeah, but when
other than
guitar
that,
is life, you might as well be gravely wounded.
it
I
wasn't
guess.
his trigger finger.
Yeah, it's easier. What's the? I remember when this came out, I was not like hyped for it from like El Mariachi fame, but
Me either.
I remember there was it was a big deal coming out. I remember seeing the commercial on TV a lot. The shot that's with the explosion behind them, where it's insane
Walking.
to think that this is like practical shit. Like it's the entire frame is just flames with these two people in it. I didn't see that. No, I think I did see this in theaters. How about you guys? What is this a first time watch? Have you seen this before? What's the story?
It's a first time watch for me, although
Whoa,
I did see
really?
El Mariachi in the theaters.
That's crazy. For me, it was not a first time watch. I actually went to the movies to see this with my grandmother. My grandmother is a huge action movie fan. I remember the posters. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this came out after Interview with a Vampire. So I kind of knew who Antonio Banderas was from that. But I had no inclination, or I didn't know anything about El Mariachi.
Mhm.
So this definitely wasn't like any kind of, I didn't have any preconceived notions about what it was going to be, but I very clearly remember having a great time watching this in the theater with my grandmother. I covered her eyes during the sex scene. And I loved this movie, from the time I saw it, and it was one of the movies that I've loved. I haven't seen it in a long time, but this is something that I've always enjoyed.
Have any of you seen El Mariachi? Like,
yeah.
Okay. And what
Yeah.
what'd you what'd you think?
I saw it when it first came out because I was reading all the articles about it. The whole headline about that film back in the day was that this guy made a movie for $7,000, and as a kid shooting stuff on VHS camcorder with his friends, including you guys, I was like, wow, how did he do that? But obviously, it's kind of a misnomer because it went through a lot of extra post production, and I'm sure they kind of spruced it up before it was released. I thought it was a nice little film for an independent movie, especially on a shoestring budget. But for whatever reason, I just missed Desperado in the theater.
And you saw Carlos?
I saw El Mariachi after, because all of a sudden now Robert Rodriguez was a name, and you find out there's more to the lore. And it's kind of tough to watch El Mariachi after having watched Desperado, because it's basically kind of the same movie but kicked up a notch. So I kind of enjoyed it. I think when we were talking earlier, Dash, you were saying that there was a connection there that wasn't apparently readily that you could tell off the bat this is like a semi sequel or kind of related but not really?
No, no, I was actually mistaken when I watched it. So,
Ah,
like, I thought that he
okay.
was, like, I knew that it was a case of mistaken identity for the first one, but the way that there was a certain write up that I saw about the 4K release. So there was just a recent 4K release that came out through Arrow, and I was reading one of like a person's review, and they were saying that the mistaken identity was that this like Antonio Banderas is actually a different person, but watching it, he clearly replaces the character from the first one. So I thought that
Okay.
that was a connection that I missed, but it was just
Okay.
actually a
I was
completely
completely
wrong
watching
article.
the movie through that lens.
Really?
Dash. Because you told me that. Because again, I only saw the first one. So
Yeah,
after you
yeah.
told me that he's is the guy that it's mistaken for, I was completely watching the movie up to the point where it's obvious that's not the case. I was like, wait a second, what happened
Yeah,
here?
that's what I was surprised because I haven't seen this movie in such a long time, and this is one of those movies that I got because of the re-release, and I knew that there was going to be a bunch of bonus features, and it
Mm.
was a part of the trilogy. So I haven't seen this probably since VHS, and similarly with El Mariachi. So when I read that, I was like, wow, I don't remember that at all. I
Yeah,
thought he
you
was
Mhm.
said
just
that. I didn't remember it.
replaying
Yeah.
the Mariachi, and then so me spreading fake news. Got my friends in trouble, but hopefully that
Fake
didn't
news strikes again.
that didn't
Fake
ruin
news.
that didn't ruin your opinions of the movies. But do you guys watch Robert Rodriguez movies in general? I mean, he's had like such a run of very different movies too, like Spy Kids and Sin Cities and Hypnotic, which is like a more recent one. What do you guys think of him overall?
I've
Telly, you want to go
seen
first?
a handful of his movies. I can't say I follow everything he's ever done. And he makes entertaining, efficient films, but nothing that I've revisited in any sort of great detail.
Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of Robert Rodriguez. Again, just a Hispanic filmmaker, kind of making movies that I really enjoyed. So I was always fascinated by his stuff. Watching this, one thing that struck me was I was really reminded of um, Dusk Till Dawn. I don't know if it's the cinematographer that he chooses.
Mm,
Something about the feel, the visual feel of his movies, kind of run across. Maybe not the Spy Kids movies. I haven't seen those, but between this Dust Till Dawn, and The Grindhouse,
mm.
they all have this same kind of visual language that's very unique to him that I really appreciate. And so I'm a fan. I haven't really seen anything. I haven't really kept up or seen anything recent, but he had a run there that I was very much a fan of.
It's funny, as
Yeah,
I was watching Desperado, it made me interested in watching Spy Kids because I felt some of the things that happened in this film. And I know we'll get into that later, but I felt would work better in like a children's movie.
mhm. Yeah, he's very it's very
Oh.
like cartoonish in a way
Hmm.
that I think when I was watching this and we were talking about, just the movie in general, is that like it does feel a little bit like slapsticky parodying, not like super serious with some of the stuff. Like, and I think that I remember it being this like dead ass serious, action movie. But like once you watch it, like the beginning, there's jokes, there, over
Hmm.
the top, the Steve Buscemi sequence when he's like telling
Mm,
the
telling a
myth, like
story.
it does feel larger than life, and it feels like it was like felt like I think Carlos, to your point, like what this reminded me of is those other movies because they're very fast, like especially
Hmm.
Planet Terror. It's like a
Hmm.
very shoestring budget, intent to feel like they're covering mistakes and just trying to put the best foot forward. And this movie on like a much larger scale felt like a low budget, high budget, like it felt like a high budget with the sensibilities of a low budget. This was like a really cheaply made film, but
I can
I don't
already
know.
tell where this conversation is going, and I have a feeling I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be the odd man out. All right, so let's
Uh
All
oh.
go.
right,
Let's
we'll
do it.
see.
Let's do it.
Let's
No,
do
I'm
it.
just saying. Like for me, it felt like a bigger budget exploitation film.
Which I think,
Way after they hadn't been around for a while for
yeah,
95. What did you think?
absolutely. Telly, or do you
How?
want me to go?
Yeah, you start, man.
So yeah, everything you guys are saying, all right, but in like the best possible way. I think
Oh yeah,
all of
yeah.
that's intentional. I feel like, you know, the over the top sequence in the very beginning. As soon as I watch it, I'm like, bet this is
Hmm.
gonna be. This is what I'm in for. None of it is. serious. This is, this may be the ultimate version of style over substance, and I'm here for it. But
Mhm.
it's not trying to be substantive; it's trying to be stylish, and I feel like it succeeds in all the right ways. I don't take this as a serious movie where I'm looking for character development or any of that stuff. I just want to see Antonio Banderas looking cool, throwing bullets at his enemies, right? Like the Steve Buscemi intro, I think sells me immediately. And again, now I think watching this, I'm realizing I didn't really it didn't really occur to me that that scene in the beginning was him telling a story, right? Trying to scare them. So I'm taking that as it happened just the way he's telling it. But
Mhm.
then when you realize he's telling a story and trying to scare them, all of a sudden people are getting blown away across the room from shots. The that whole thing about the his face not coming out of the shadow, like the lights were dimming, like that whole sequence, I just thought was so expertly, like, again, he's telling a fake story, he's telling a tall tale, and the way
Mhm.
that that scene was directed, I thought was like chef's kiss. I feel like once you throw away any conventions of expectations of this being like anything other than a popcorn sit in, you're here for a good ride, don't take any of this seriously. I think it really delivers in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
what do you
had
think,
a
Telly?
yeah, I went into this blind, so I only knew the film from what I read about when it came out, the trailer and also the poster. And the poster is very melodramatic. I remember,
Mm-hmm.
so I expected this to be more serious than it was. So I found the tone quite jarring. And I know El Mariachi, it's kind of the original one. It gets kind of silly as well, but I don't know if it quite works here, where it gets very comic booky, and that's why I was saying that. Yeah, it makes sense that Robert Rodriguez ended up doing children's movies, because I could see how that sensibility might work a little bit better. Uh,
Boo.
but Antonio Banderas, yeah, we'll
Hater.
talk about him a little bit more. I don't think he was probably the best choice for this role, and obviously the script is it's kind of all over the place. And one thing that I kind of I wish he didn't do was kill off all the really great character actors like halfway through the movie.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I think for me with the tone, it it does, I thought, set that up early. Like I think that the over the top and all the stuff that I was talking about, Carlos, was like I'm in the camp that I love that. Like
Okay.
what I was saying about it wasn't negative towards the movie, but I think like with this like right out the gate they'd say like this is going to be something that's a little bit silly and a little bit over the top to
When he hits the in the beginning the credits, he's like singing that song or whatever, which is a very famous Mexican like mariachi song, and he's there at a concert at a club, and first of all, it's weird. Like they're there to see a mariachi at this like kind of high end club, but like a knife fight breaks out, and he
yeah.
continues to play. He's jamming on that guitar too, on the bar. Walks over behind the guy with the knife and hits the guy with the guitar, but he doesn't hit the guy with the business end of the guitar. He hits the guy with the neck of the guitar and
Yeah.
manages to knock him out. As soon as you see that, like, all right, this is what this is gonna be. And again, I mean, it's silly, but like, I think it was trying to be a little bit.
Yeah, and that's I don't know. That's where I think for me, there's a whole bunch of moments of that. So like the moments in between the cartoonish stuff are also pretty cartoonish too. So like for example, Danny Trejo dialing on the
Chef's kiss
phone with a
with a
knife.
knife.
Like I think
Yeah, yeah,
that
that was dope.
there was no real
Reason for that.
attempt to like really have those character arcs, but I thought that there were a lot of character actors with like
Yeah.
where you have Steve Buscemi, Cheech, Quentin Tarantino popping out. You have like just very archetypal type people. Even like the guy who gets his leg broken but then beats the badass. Like doesn't
With a
really
jump
serve.
kick? How do you do a
Yeah,
Hmm.
it
jump
just
kick with a broken leg? A
this
spinning
did
roundhouse.
remind me of making like in working on movies and thinking about stuff because it seemed like this seemed like somebody that was like us at the time, making the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that we were influenced by so just
Hmm.
like straightforward. And I don't know if Telly some of those things would carry on with a serious movie with like the dick gun, the guns
Hmm.
in the sleeves, the John
Yeah.
Woo double guns. What did you think about some of the influences? Like if you take them maybe separately from
Yeah.
the
Well, the
story
influence.
beats.
Yeah, the influence is the John Woo influence is very obvious, and I think Robert Rodriguez has admitted that.
Said it. Yeah, he has.
But he doesn't. I mean, he's not John Woo, like back in the day. Um, yeah, I don't know. The influence is there. I don't know if it really works, because it just feels like he's doing John Woo, and there's a little some maybe with a little extra flourishes here and there that you can only do with a larger budget. And then I guess because I'm not the biggest fans of westerns, but I do appreciate them, and I think Once Upon a Time in the West is like the most perfect western film ever made. So I saw shades of that there, um, but it doesn't really. If he was trying to go for this brooding, mysterious lead character in Antonio Banderas, didn't come across. And I don't know if it was just from a direction standpoint, or just Antonio Banderas not being able to do anything else but being this like really good looking, handsome sort of avatar, as opposed to like this brooding action star at that time, because he was still fairly new to the genre.
And that was actually going to be one of my next questions of like, what did you guys think of Antonio Banderas as an action star? I mean, this is like him carrying the movie with a somewhat unproven director. Like now you can talk about Robert Rodriguez, he can like assemble stuff. His,
Mhm.
I think like behind the scenes featurettes are almost as interesting as the movie. Just for
Oh yeah.
example, like Sin City, it turns out so many, that was like one of the first movies that they filmed entirely on a green screen, and it turned out so many of the actors never met each other. Like he
Mhm.
filmed it
No.
in such a way that like you would have scenes with people, but he like was so aware, like you become so aware of the production part of it. So even with this one, like when you talk about the movie, like they only had certain principal actors for X amount of days in this like really short schedule and a really cheap budget. But given all of that, you're not supposed to be aware of that, and whoever you have front and center really has like a much bigger role to play.
Mhm.
So, Antonio Banderas in a bunch of movies before this, but his first like really lead acting role. Carlos, do you think he pulled it off?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, Telly, I couldn't disagree with you more. I feel like Antonio Banderas wasn't meant to be this brooding, imposing, menacing. That's the whole. That's the whole point of him. That's the whole point. Is like he's a musician. He's not a war torn veteran who's seen so many things. He's literally just a musician who lost his girlfriend. I feel like because there's not a lot of hand to hand stuff on here, it's a lot of shooting stuff. It doesn't really require a certain level of physicality for him. I think the way he delivered some of those lines during, like, I love the scene where he's reloading his guns and a bullet like just misses him and hits the bar and he goes, "You missed me!" Right? Like I just feel like he delivered a guy doing amazing, like a normal guy doing amazing things. Really well. I like the chemistry that he had with my boo Salma Hayek. I think that worked really well. And I don't know. I and to the point of the choreography or the where it got some of its inspiration doing the John Woo thing. Yeah, John Woo was definitely there, but I feel like some of the stuff, the way that was edited, I think even more than just John Woo movies. I feel like some of those shots were edited kind of like martial arts flicks, like kind of like wide shots. And I don't know, something about the way he's like throwing the bullets. I don't know. Every single part of the choreography like really worked for me, and I think I don't know that anybody else would have pulled this role off. As again, it's kind of a cliche thing to say, but I really liked his portrayal of this character. And again, I think mainly it comes down to like the chemistry he has. Even some of the silly scenes he's having with the kid, teaching him how to play the guitar and stuff. I thought he really pulled it off, and I was a fan of Antonio Banderas from this movie, and so I think we're a lot of people. So
Mhm.
I wholly disagree.
Yeah, I saw Assassins, which came out
Mm,
after this, and I
That's
remember,
terrible. That
yeah.
is terrible.
So I
that
remember not really being crazy about him, and I think he does. I don't know. I just think he does a similar thing here, where he's trying to be this charismatic kind of like badass. Um, but yeah, well, maybe I missed something.
No,
You're
I
wrong,
think
Telly. You're wrong. Just deal with it. It's okay to be wrong sometimes.
no, I think for me watching these, like they do feel like they're playing a song. Like they almost do feel like a cover. And so while watching it, like, and that's what I was trying to say before. I remember the movie being super serious. Like I remember him being like, basically Mexican Superman kind of deal.
Hmm.
Of but watching it, it did feel so like tongue-in-cheek, like very, he's the quiet hero going through a town and like, you know, kind of just like mixing it up. And I think that really lent itself to like everyone is on that. The thing where I would judge it more as like a failure if it didn't seem intentional because of where everything else is. I think like the revelations are on par with the melodrama of the acting. So it reminds me a little bit of like She Shoots Straight, not as extreme, but you remember like where they had like, you know, the funeral scenes and some stuff was just so melodramatic with the music. I think
Yeah.
that this one with like, you know, the big revelation that it's his brother the whole time, and you
And
know,
that's
it's like
straight out of a novella. The
it
old like
happens
Spanish
right.
novellas.
Yeah,
Straight
it
out of the
happens
novellas.
right when he has him in his crosshairs. Like I feel like
Good
the
stuff.
movie is always at that 10 of like, what were all these really high stakes moments of even just like the little stupid stuff of the hidden office and the like, you know, the shit
shit
urinal.
Yeah.
Like it felt like someone was like, you know what would be cool, writing this script. And it does feel like it doesn't feel serious because of that. It does feel very juvenile at times, which I think does lend itself to the Spy Kids thing. But I think as like a package of that is like, yeah, man, I want to see someone shooting rockets out of a fucking
Out of a
case,
guitar
and when they
case.
do
Yeah.
it, they got to do
He
it
does that
like,
little
you
lean.
know, the
He does
lead.
a little lean.
Yeah, it
Hell
feels
yeah.
yeah.
And I
The
think
film
Rodriguez was young too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Like in his early 20s when this
Yeah,
came
he's
out
a
too.
young
So
guy making
Yeah.
this. But yeah, I thought it just felt very comic booky. But there's some parts I think were trying to be played straight because again, this whole movie is about Antonio Banderas. He's on a mission of revenge, right?
Yeah.
And so that just seems to kind of be fodder because it really doesn't. It's not really explored. Or I mean, I hate to compare him to Jean-Claude Van Damme, but if you think about Cyborg, right, and they cut back to that flashback and how intense that was compared to this one, and maybe it was because Jean-Claude Van Damme couldn't quite act yet or whatever, but it just felt like, okay, this guy's scarred from that loss and that experience, and that's driving him towards this path with the guy that he's trying to kill. I just didn't feel that at all with Antonio Banderas, where he's just kind of floating from scene to scene, banging Salma Hayek, shooting a couple of people, teaching a kid how to play guitar, and then okay, maybe I'll kill the guy that killed my girlfriend and shot
listen,
me
if
through the
that life
hand.
is wrong, I don't want to be right.
Yeah, I guess he's like
That's
he's
life
like
for me.
he's like Latino Shaft, right?
Okay,
Like
yeah.
that's the thing that makes it tough because like
Shaft.
so that's a very delicate balance, right? Like, do you want to be brooding or do you want to be cool? And there was a part
Yeah.
of the movie where I was like, yo, this dude's mad cool in the movie, which like I think overall like that there was a feeling of watching this movie that just felt so 95 as fuck, where it was like you want your heroes to be cool, smoking cigarettes, banging, like
Playing
killing
the guitar.
people,
Yeah, it
playing
really is a
guitar.
product. It feels like a product of this time because even the opening scene was like, okay, this came out in the wake of Reservoir Dogs and Quentin
Yeah.
Tarantino because this is straight out of a Tarantino movie, and
And you get
Steve Buscemi doing it, right?
yeah. I think the thing that I liked about this like that open and especially the beginning of the movie is I forgot like what that dialogue felt like coming up in a movie. Like there was a time where it got like really over the top where every movie was trying to be like have a Quentin Tarantino scene, but I forgot like just how quippy the beginning was and like, you know, how like likable those characters were for the short amount of time that they were in there.
He
Sorry,
was like the bartender. Was like the bartender always survives. Actually, oh no, you know what, another one I like too was in the bar where the actual bar shootout, not the retelling one, where he's like, oh, it's just a guitar, and they're like, oh, it's just a guitar, and then the gun comes up, and he's like, no, there are guns there. He's like, okay, it is me, but I'm not here for you guys. I'm not. Hold your gun, right? Like that whole in that intro sequence, he does this really cool thing where like. Again, it's a dream sequence. It's not real, but he does this cool thing where, like, he goes behind his head and all of a sudden manifests this fucking shotgun.
Straight up
like,
Bugs Bunny shit.
Straight up Bugs Bunny, and all of that for me was just great. Just
hell
great.
yeah. Give Carlos a second. We'll do some clever editing. What did you guys think about all the familiar faces? And I think like their heyday. Like I was just trying to think about like Steve Buscemi was such a staple of like all of my early like he was just always the comic relief, just always great. Really young, full haired Quentin Tarantino. Very fresh Selma Hayek. Danny Trejo looking fucking
Amazing.
shredded, like prime. Cheech still on his shit. What did you guys think about the surrounding cast?
No, they were, like I was saying, they were great. I wish Steve Buscemi's character lasted a bit longer because those two had a very interesting relationship in the
Dynamic, yeah.
film. But again, like with Quentin Tarantino's character, they give him a long introduction just to kind of kill him off
Shoot him.
without any really real consequence. Salma Hayek is there. I can't say it's a great performance. It's nice to look at. And Cheech Marin is, again, he's a lot of fun. Wish he lived a bit beyond the first act of the movie.
Mm.
All right.
But
So
I think
first
the
of all,
problem
Telly,
is that those people are so memorable, and the guy that's playing the villain is not so memorable, and that's one of the biggest weaknesses in the cast.
Not big
agreed.
Bucho fans.
Not, yeah, I agree 100%. So to your point about, first of all, you better put some respect on Salma Hayek's name. That's my boo. I'm not going to stand for any ill talk of her. She was magnificent. Everything she
I
did
didn't
was
say anything bad
fantastic.
about her. You know,
I think Danny Trejo. I think, as a matter of fact, might have been like his second movie. I think American Me, or one of those gangster movies, in prison movies, was his first. But he was, again, perfectly cast, menacing, using the knives to like push the buttons on the phone. One thing that stuck out to me during his scene is, I mean, it was cool how he was playing with those knives, with the throwing knives the whole
Yeah.
time. But those little bitch ass throwing knives ain't killing nobody. First of all, like, they're just not big enough. So I'll keep on looking. I'm like, yo, yeah, he got him, but he clipped him in the stomach with that little. That's like getting stabbed with a steak knife. Like, it's not gonna kill you. So I thought that was a little odd, but he was perfectly cast. Cheech Marin was doing his Cheech Marin thing.
Mhm.
I liked Quentin Tarantino in it. I think they were friends at the time, and I think he was just like, "Yo, I got a funny joke to tell, and I tell it really funny." I feel like they were just in Hollywood somewhere poring over the script, and Tarantino tells that joke, and he was like, "Wouldn't it be great if you were in that movie?" And I think he was already famous at the time, and so Robert Rodriguez was like, "Yo, if I could get you on here for free, let's get you on here." Which is they probably had him for one day on set, right? I
Mhm.
think like that's probably a lot of what it was. Is like, we've got you for one day, so we can't spend too much time filming with you. Buscemi was great, but to Telly's point, that actor, I forget his name, is always the villain in everything he does, and he always plays this kind of villain. And I don't think he did anything particularly poorly. He just didn't do anything great. I feel like he was very generic, very, kind of one note, and that actor has played that same part way better in other movies. I don't know if it's the writing or what it was. And again, I hesitate to. I don't think he was bad. He just wasn't very good.
no,
And if
he
I
was
had
very
one negative
stock.
takeaway,
Yeah, it felt like a Miami
generic.
Vice villain, and at first I thought it was Constance Mandalore, the guy from the Saw movies. But
Oh
at
shit.
first, Hoffman, but then I looked him up; it wasn't. But
And I
yeah, I
think in
just
his
thought he
dream,
was.
it was a
Yeah,
different actor. Wasn't it a different actor in the dream than it was in the actual, in real, like, in the dream sequence in the beginning? He has like a flashback of when it's happening,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's like
and
the Desperado guy. I mean, the El Mariachi
that's
villain. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, I did catch that. All right, I'm sorry, Tali. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, I just thought the villain was very weak in this film, and it was kind of just stock bad guy, yelling at his henchmen, shooting at them, at
Mhm.
will, and but really, yeah, just not memorable as a character, and it's all building up to that too, so it's kind of a letdown at the end.
Yeah, see, the thing that I'm running into with this podcast sometimes, and this is an example of like when I felt it was good, is I kind of like the stockness of it.
Okay.
Like
Hmm.
I like a movie this was the time that this happened, it was like the only thing I liked about it was Tango and Cash. Like I loved how stock the villains were and like
Hmm.
mustache twirly, and I feel
Mm.
like this one had that too. And sometimes like I really don't like the just like you're a placeholder, you're very corny. I thought that was like a little bit of the case with I'm not sure if it was Avenging Force. It was not Avenging Force. Maybe it was Code of Silence. Not important. The with this one, I kind of liked just those kind of like very high, character type boss, villain. Like very cartoonish of lighting the match off the guy's face, like that was
Yeah,
like a
so that's
defining
it.
characteristic. So like I don't disagree, but like in this one, I kind of liked it.
Okay.
Um, Interesting thing with the casting was Raul Julia was originally cast as Bucho,
Rest in
but
peace.
died before production began. How do you feel Raul Julia would have
I think he
been?
would have
I
breathed
think,
more life into the character for sure.
Mhm.
yeah, I'm a huge Raul Julia fan. He's like a Puerto Rican icon. I think that maybe again, I'm not really sure. I don't think the guy acted poorly. It might have just been the script or the writing that he didn't have much to deal with. But I only imagine Raul Julia would have brought like a different tone to it that I might have enjoyed a little bit more.
Okay, Wild Take was Robert Rodriguez's second choice to play the El Mariachi was John Leguizamo. How do you think he would have been?
I think that would have been a terrible. I think that would have been really because then at that point I can't even buy the over the top action. John Leguizamo had a moment again. We were looking at Executive Decision a few weeks back where
Yeah.
he was also trying to like come off as a legitimate action person.
Mm,
Now he's switching over and he's trying to do more legitimate like dramatic scenes.
yeah.
And I'm sorry, nothing against him personally. I feel like he's probably a really cool guy. I can't buy him seriously. He's at his best when he's doing his one man shows, making me laugh. And every time I see him trying to do anything other than that, I'm like, bro, just tell me a joke, please.
Well, I feel that if you had John Leguizamo, it would have leaned more towards comedy and probably closer in tone with the first movie. So it would have been a very different movie. Can't really
There's
say
no
if
way
it's
John Leguizamo
better
backs
or
Salma
worse.
Hayek, bro. Come on. There's no way he
You
backs
see
Salma
what Salma
Hayek.
Hayek's banging these days. So hey,
Well, he's also a billionaire.
It
This
becomes
guy's a
like
he's
billionaire.
got the big bucks. You know, he's got the Super
I,
Mario
I try
Brothers
not to think
money.
about it. It hurts.
Okay,
it becomes like Romeo Must Die. Like at the end,
he's
she's just
banging
like,
Ed
"Good
Norton.
job, buddy."
So
One thing that I found really interesting was that I was watching this movie in the captions, and Steve Buscemi's character is called Buscemi. And then
Oh, is that
when you
right?
look at the end of the movie, I was watching a little bit of the commentary, and Robert Rodriguez says that he sucks at naming characters. So
Mm.
it's Buscemi, short bartender, Quentin Tarantino as pickup guy, and there's a guy who's the right hand, and he's just called the right hand. I just thought that was cool. That doesn't.
That's cool.
So yeah, overall, I thought this was directed really well. The more that I know about like the making of the movie and like what he was trying to do, I thought that he succeeded with the presentation. Apparently, this movie was $7 million to make. They gave him, I think, 30 million, but he wanted to do it as like a fraction of the price just to show that El Mariachi wasn't a fluke. Because
Mm.
of that, there were a lot of things that were limits. So for example, they only had Steve Buscemi for a week. They only had Cheech for 6 days. So they, had certain scenes where they had to like wrap them up really fast. He was doing a lot of overshooting and like, just trying to steal moments. I think when they had the fight scene, when they had that like makeshift little pit, the guy getting out of the ring is like the first assistant director.
Oh
So there
wow,
was like a kind of on set people like just being pulled from the set to be in the movie. Um,
that's
Overall, I
cool.
felt like that came across at the movie. Like for me, it felt like watching something that was made by someone that loved what they were making. And I think that like it's tough to put your signature so front and center, but the signature is kind of the thing that I think that's what I like about like Quentin Tarantino movies of like, oh, this is someone else couldn't have made this movie. I see the mind state of the person
Mhm.
doing it, and you can tell like, oh, they're putting some of their friends in it. This is what they're influenced by. A lot of the locations were the same locations from El Mariachi,
Mariachi.
so he is essentially remaking the same movie, but just like coming in 3 years later with 3 times the budget. What do you think overall of how the movie was put together and like how it felt, and
Yeah.
just the overall presentation?
Well, I didn't know he made it for only 7 million. So hats off to him because it looks looks like a 20 something million movie for that time period. So great job. And yeah, it had a really good polish to it. Didn't feel like a low budget movie, although it does feel like some punches were pulled in terms of like the scale that they could go for. But I think that was also part of Robert Rodriguez's brand at that time because he was known as the guy that could make movies on the cheap. So that makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, I really, again, I think I kind of stated it earlier. There's a look and a feel to a Robert Rodriguez's movie, especially during this time period. And as soon as the movie starts, you're already kind of in it. Um, I don't know if it's, again, I don't know enough to know about like film stocks or lighting. You know, I'm not a filmmaker person myself, but something about the look of and the feel, like the crunchiness of his movies, and also the way he directs, looks is something that appeals to me immediately. Also, the way he interacts some of the music with some of the scenes. Also, he's got a little bit of a dreamy kind of feel to some of this stuff too. I remember specifically like Salma Hayek singing while playing the guitar while the goons are approaching the bedroom they're in, and that whole scene.
Hmm.
Again, feels something straight out of you know his repertoire, or maybe a John Woo thing. Every single thing about this movie screams Robert Rodriguez. And again, I loved it.
I think it's pretty cool that he has to have a not has to, but he gets a location that wasn't like overly done. Like it's really tough to be like, all right, I'm going to make New York my thing, right? Like you're not the first
Hmm.
person to shoot in the village, but the just the ability of like my early like opinion of what Mexico looked like, and now you see it a lot with like Breaking Bad and like that kind of much more like neo noir that kind of took place later of like the Texas border town, like serving as the like new generation modern western. I thought that this was cool, especially when you pair it with El Mariachi and Once Upon a Time in Mexico, of just kind of putting his stamp of like ownership of this like this pocket of film that just generally isn't shown. One thing
Yeah,
that
and,
I yeah
right. I
no
was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say to the point of showcasing Mexico. Again, this kind of whole small town feel, like you're just waiting for a shootout to erupt. Again, very much reminiscent of the old genre Western films. One thing that stood out to me too, though, was they had to bring in. I think they had Karens before Karens was a thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because again, it just kind of felt like, and it felt odd to me. I know it was played for comedic effect, but there were Karens in this little small town bar in Mexico. But if I just didn't understand what possible reason these three Karens would decide to go and stop in at this particular bar in this particular place. They just seemed really out of place. Which again, I kind of really appreciated. It kind of brought us out and reminded us of where we were and how kind of we're not used to that set and that setting. But you're right, I did. I know it's a cliche thing to say, but I really feel like in this particular instance, the set was a character as well. The setting was a character.
Definitely. You know what I like the thing about the action sequences is a lot of it was like you've seen it before, but I think seeing them all together and then seeing some of it a little bit amplified. So there'd be a scene like where he's like kicking someone off and like normally that would be the death, but then
He
he like
shoots him on the way
also
out.
shoots him
Uh
going
huh.
at it. Did seem like someone was like this whole movie just felt like someone going, it would be cool,
Would be
it would
cool.
be
Yeah.
cool.
Hmm.
And it
Um
was.
One thing about the action that I found really funny was there was a quote from Antonio Banderas to the NPR talking about the stunt doubles, and he says, "It was crazy. We did a movie with practically no money. We did a movie with $3 million for an action movie that's practically nothing. There was a guy in the movie, a stunt guy that I kill like 9 times. I killed the guy with beard, without a beard." With a mustache, with blonde hair, with glasses, without glasses. I mean, I think the guy who made the most money in the movie was the stunt guy. I don't know. I just love that. Like, I feel like generally,
Did
like,
they?
especially now, like watching a movie feels so much like it's churned out by a machine that this I don't know, just watching this reminded me of like, there's a dude who's like li- very rarely do I feel like I'm watching someone like live out their dreams making a movie, but this one kind of had that like Terminator feel to me of like, just very run and gun,
Gorilla.
scrappy. You get one shot, and this was it. Um Due to the film's relatively low budget, the same two stuntmen were used throughout the movie, and this cost $7 million. For context, that's $3.5 million less than a comedy the same year, which is a House Guest starring Sinbad and Phil Hartman. Just
Oh
to give
shit.
you the idea of how far some money will go. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty big testament of, especially with Telly saying like it didn't feel like a
Hmm.
$7 million movie. I think hearing Robert Rodriguez say that he wanted to prove himself by making a budget stretch is well done, especially
Mission
considering.
accomplished.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
movie grossed 25 million locally and 58 million worldwide, and it was released at number 2 behind a movie that I also saw in theaters, Mortal Kombat.
Oh,
Really? I
Yeah.
saw that in theaters
I
too.
saw
Okay,
Mortal Kombat
like
in the theater in Times
that
Square at
was
midnight.
that was a phenomenon at the time. So I
Yeah.
feel like to be able to go up against that, I'm not mad at it. But actually, 25 million doesn't really sound like a lot. I feel like I thought that movie had gotten Desperado had gotten a lot more mind share than just 25 mil. Seems like a small amount,
I mean,
but I
it's pretty
mean,
nuts when you're looking at the movie. Like, I think it opened at 11 million with Mortal Kombat at like 14. And for a run, like, opening at 10 is crazy now. Like, if
mhm.
it came
Yeah.
out at 10, like, basically you're an indie movie and you were in
Mhm.
like 2 theaters. This was one of the higher, like, I think it was like 67th
Mhm.
of the year, which I forgot what movie was nearby. I don't think it was like Billy Madison. I forgot. I have to look it up. But it wasn't like, it was in some pretty good company of movies that came out in 1995, especially for a budget
Yeah, that's a good
7 million.
return for
Mhm.
sure.
And also just in general, pretty well received movie. It's at a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert, friend of the show, thought everything moved too fast and found the story lacking. So not in a too much of a disagreement with Telly, but I also do agree with the note. I do think it was very like fast, very style over substance, but I'm going to say that it felt pretty um, intentional for me.
Tell
So that's
Telly
where I give it a
Ebert.
pass. don't ever
Yeah, I don't
over.
agree. I don't. Agree half of Ebert's point. I don't know if it moved too fast, but certainly, yeah, the story is kind of all over the place.
Won't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
I was
So,
just gonna say, I do. There were a couple of down moments, but I thought overall the pace was pretty peppy. I didn't. I think that if this movie had long, drawn out emotional sequences, it would have felt out of place. And it does have a couple of slow moments. Again, him talking to the kid on the street. Some of the moments about the bookstore and stuff that maybe weren't uh, as punchy as the rest of the movie. I think maybe they were trying to do a little bit of character development for Salma Hayek's character, but overall, I didn't think it was plotting or anything. I thought it was
Mhm.
pretty quick and well paced.
you know what this kind of reminded me a little bit of? A little bit of a Machete. Another
Okay,
Robert Rodriguez, just in the sense of
Joint.
like, it's that exploitation of like, this dude's a badass, he's gonna fuck up everybody in the town. He broods, but we don't need like the full monologue kind of idea.
Mhm.
But at the trade-off, it's just
How
a
bad?
series of vibes. With a
How bad would it have been if Antonio Banderas delivered the last Boy Scout monologue, just like staring out into the window, and like, oh my God, she was my love of my life,
see
and
another
Yeah.
and going to a thing that was like probably my favorite part of the movie. There of the
Really?
last Boy Scout. Like, you know what it is? There's certain stuff that is like just cheesy beyond like belief. And when I'm watching this, I was just like, there's no way, with the music coming in, Damon Wayans giving a like full script page monologue, which you had no business doing. And I was like, this movie is amazing to me. And
Yeah. Well,
I literally
and
made a
I'm
fart
not
noise.
saying. And when I say that, I think Antonio Banderas was miscast. I don't think you need to delve into that.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
in Once Upon a Time in the West, the main character, played by Charles Bronson, he never goes into any deep monologue or remembrance about anything. You're just trying to figure out what this guy is up to in terms of
Mhm.
why is he in town, why is he going after this person. So you didn't need that. I just think that Antonio Banderas, to his credit, is probably too good looking to really have that, to project that backstory onto
So
him.
the truth comes out. You're really
Yeah,
just hating on
yeah, I'm just
his
jealous
good looks,
of,
Tully.
yes.
That's what it is. Fair enough. Fair enough.
It's like Charles Bronson could never.
Right.
Charles Bronson like, it's not fair.
Although, yeah, there is a Bronson reference in the movie because there's a cameo by the Wildy Magnum from Death Wish 3 in the film,
oh,
for
sick.
those paying attention.
And I feel like that's gonna make its appearance one day, because I watched
Mhm.
that pretty recently. The Death Wishes, and that fucking was insane. I was looking at a letterbox. Let's hit some reviews of what's here, what the internet's has to say for Desperado. Tom U. Lacra says Antonio Banderas shooting his guns gay as hell in this one. 1 star.
You
I
know,
don't know what
Okay.
I did notice. I guess because from watching so many John Wick movies and Hong Kong movies, it's kind of like when you watch people that don't know martial arts trying to
Yeah, yeah.
pretend to
Trying
know
to do
martial
martial
arts.
arts.
Because there are
Yeah.
some in some scenes when Antonio Banderas is shooting. I don't know how intentional this was. He's just like flicking his wrist. He's
Yeah,
just
he's
like
throwing
not
the
holding
bullets.
the gun properly.
He's
Yeah.
throwing the
And
bullets.
I don't know if that was just lack of training or if that
No,
was
no, that was
something
intentional.
intentional. Okay,
That
it
was
just
intentional
looked.
because they talked
I
about it
didn't
later.
get it as intentional. It just looked like maybe I don't know. That was just confused by how the gun, how he was holding his gun in some of the shots.
Now, there was a scene where I don't know what you would do, right? Okay, I just want to preface this by saying I'm not an arms specialist or trainer or anything, but there's a scene where
I
he's like
am.
on the floor with the guns and his legs like up, like it looks like he's kind of like lounging on the on like the living room floor, like with his legs kicking up, watching a movie. But I don't know. When I saw this review, it made me laugh, so I want to include it. And then we have Hellman Dollar, who says, apart from a couple scenes, this was one of the best movies I've seen, and Salma Hayek bad. 5 stars.
Carlos,
Absolutely.
is that your account?
It was me. It was me,
Okay.
actually. Again, before we kind of wrap up, though, one thing I want to kind of step back and give a lot of credit to is the music.
Okay.
Um,
Los
Again, I really
Lobos.
thought it was Los Lobos. Antonio Banderas, I believe, was actually himself singing in that intro sequence. And again, he has this. Rodriguez has this way about incorporating music into a lot of his movies, where some of the scenes become music videos. Right? It has that music video feel. And again, like a couple of quick examples are again Salma Hayek kind of singing over him while the enemies are kind of encroaching on them. The scene when he's walking towards Salma Hayek and he's about to get shot from behind. Little things with like the little teaching the kid the guitar. There's music throughout this whole movie, and I think it really adds a color and a flavor to it. And majority of it is Latin music, of course, and acoustic guitar stuff. He is a mariachi, and I think that they do a really really good job in this film, choosing the right feel and the right feeling to anytime there was music in the song. I felt it was really well placed and added to the scene, added to the drama. And I think they did kind of the same thing with Dusk Till Dawn. I just really like his use of it, and I wanted to shout it out before we kind of moved on to our final thoughts.
No, I feel like he does that too. With Sin City has like the Jessica Alba, like
Mm-hmm.
movies often have like at least like a musical number
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
aspect
it's
to
kind of
it.
like a musical number. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought, and that would also be weird if El Mariachi it was no music.
Fair enough.
Or if it was whack, right? Like they
It
got
was
his boy.
trash.
It's like, yeah, his boy's like, yeah, I could do music, and it's like, oh man, this is
It's all terrible.
yeah, it's not good at all. We have to change the name of the movie. So yeah, this is the part of the podcast where we take all of our everything that we talked about, everything that we didn't talk about, and then we judge these movies. We put a number to everything that we thought about film. We simplify and boil everything that people put their hard earned work and time into, and we rate it out of 5, like a real podcast should. So Telly, why don't you tell us what you thought of this movie?
Yeah, very watchable. But I guess I was just really I was expecting something a lot more serious, like you guys were saying. So the tone just kind of didn't work with me, and just like the archetype of I love movies about like a lone hero kind of going on a suicide mission. So even the ending when he calls in recruits, I just
Hmm.
felt that kind of took away from Antonio Banderas' character, and it
Hmm.
was just kind of there for just I don't know because they get killed off immediately, and it's not set up whatsoever that there's this gang of guys carrying like
Musicians with bazookas in their
yeah,
trunks.
like fire powered guitar cases. So that was just a strange way to end, and also the ending itself it just kind of ends. He shows up at the villain's lair and shoots him, and the movie's over. I was like,
Yeah,
wait,
we
that's
didn't talk
it?
about that. we didn't talk about that. That ending, I think, is the thing that really lets the movie down the most, because
Mhm.
you spend all this time for this build-up, you get this reveal, and then you don't really even see what happens. It's like a flash, and then he's in the hospital. It's very anticlimactic.
Yeah, it did.
And
It
if I
does.
had to pick one thing that really
Mhm.
bothered me, that was it.
Yeah, it does make me curious about the sequel, so I'm gonna check that out. But overall, I'll say that this is 2.5 shit stained toilet stalls out of 5.
Mm. Carlos, what say you?
I think that I absolutely thought this movie was great. I was really concerned that it wasn't going to live up, as some of these movies that we've watched subsequently, wasn't going to hold up. But I think it did in every single way. I knew what I was in for, and I feel like it delivered. There were a couple of glaring omissions, like I just said, like Telly said, with the ending and some of that. But all in all, I'm going to give this 4 bartenders laughing while being pissed on out of 5.
Wow, me and Carlos, we have a similar score going on. I think watching the movie, it wasn't as serious. I was very surprised by how not serious it was, because if you would have asked me before I rewatched it, I'd have been like, oh, this is a very stoic movie. It takes itself very serious, the way like a John Woo movie, like John Woo movies, he takes himself deadly serious, and it doesn't matter
Doves
how.
everywhere.
Yeah, so like this one, I just remember it being on that, but at the beginning, I thought it really set the stage for what the next hour and 40 minutes was going to be, and I thought that it just felt like love. It felt like someone making something that was a very fun watch. Felt like people were having a good time making it, especially knowing like some of the actors that he would re-collaborate with, and knowing that this is the first like Danny Trejo, Robert Rodriguez movie, who's in Spy Kids, who's in Machete, who's in From Dusk Till
Dust Till
Dawn, and
Dawn.
doing all of these different things, and like seeing some of the same locations, same gags. Some things were like set up in this one that didn't pay off until a later film. So yeah, I just had a really good time with it, and this is like what I think of when I think of like a shoot punch kick of like exploitation, violence, not the biggest budgets, and
Sex.
just sex, seeing some boobs, and talking about these movies with my friends. So I'm gonna give this movie 4 unused dick guns out of 5.
Nice.
To show up again in From Dusk Till Dawn. But gentlemen, thanks for watching Desperado with me.
It was great. Yeah, thank you for suggesting it. I had a great time.
And now we're going to kick it over to Carlos, who will tell us about the next episode's movie. Carlos.
So for our next film, I am going to take us back to 1986, a classic low-budget horror icon, Critters.
Yeah,
Seen
Just
by
little round scary monsters from space.
I always wanted to see it because they had that was the movie that Raphael in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was coming out of, and he goes, "Where did they come up with this stuff?" And you see like the Critters poster.
I don't remember that, but that's interesting. That's cool.
Yeah,
Cool,
I'm
yeah,
gonna bring it
so-
up next week too.
So look forward to that, guys. Yeah, Anthony, you want to take us away?
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you watch Critters and watch the episode where we talk about it. We're going to have a good time, and you don't want to miss it and get FOMO and cry. So I'm Dash. I'm hanging out with Carlos and Telly. We're Shoot Punch Kick, and we are out of here. Peace.